Hello and welcome to Rahul Sudan Value Podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. David from Xenca. Xenca is one of the leading direct selling company based out of UK, and David has an experience of almost 40 years. Let's meet David today.
Sales, because that helps people, give them an option, you know. And very often what happens is if you start in a job, once you have a family and you have debt and a mortgage or whatever it might be, you can't just leave that job and take a risk and do something else. So there are many people who are in a position where they're going to work every day, not because they want to, because they have to. Okay. And there's too much of a risk for them to go and do something else. And by supplementing their income through an alternative source, it gives them an option. It gives them a way out. It gives them choices which they don't have. You know, I mean, if you have three children, and if you have a home, and if you have payments on your car or your house or whatever it may be, you can't just walk away from that and go and take a job somewhere else and take the risk like you can if you're a single young person. You could just, you can travel the world, you can do whatever you want, you don't have any responsibilities. So I think that as long as there is a need for that kind of opportunity, then there is a future for direct selling. Does that make sense?
Definitely, it makes sense, David. Now let's take one step ahead. Now, when you look at the last 100 years, probably industrial revolution was the important thing, and then now we moved on to a more of a technological. Now you moved on to a very social aware market now. Uh, do you think right now there are more opportunities for job? I mean, there is a gig economy, there is a tech economy, and people are able to earn more money. I mean, you could drive an Uber, Ola, or you could drive probably you
Sure.
delivery, home delivery. So in this scenario, what do you think? Direct selling, would it be a second option for people as of now, or it will become a third or a fourth option? I mean, I know in India, 10 years back, it was the second option. But is it the same scenario here? It is a second option, or you're looking at third or fourth now?
No, I think that's something I'm very passionate about. And I actually do some charity work for schools, where I go and speak in a school to children who are, maybe 15, 16, and they're thinking of what career they're going to take. And part of that lecture, which I give, is about the fourth industrial revolution. So the first industrial revolution was the steam engine and, mechanization. And that was, during the industrial revolution. And the second one was mass production, where people moved to the point where things could be produced on a conveyor belt, a mass production. Then the third revolution was technology, where you had the advent of computers, and people were relying more on computers than they were on people just sat there typing, and filing paper. And then the fourth industrial revolution, which we're going through now, consists of AI, robotics, mechanization, quantum computing. There's masses and masses, the Internet of Things, masses and masses of things. But what that does is it presents an opportunity, okay, as the other three have done, as presented an opportunity. We don't know what people are going to be doing in 20 or 30 years' time. You could be parking flying cars for all I know, in a flying car park. It's amazing the way that technology is having an impact on things. Okay. However, when it comes to direct sales, yes, there are many other opportunities, and people are moving towards this gig economy. They're moving back towards not having a 9 to 5 job, a 40-year career span, and so on. But what direct sales has to do is it has to keep up with the times. So in other words, if your opportunity has a good online presence, if it's got a good compensation plan, if it's not loaded towards just providing products to distributors in a scheme like a Ponzi scheme, okay. But if you're providing a good product at a good price and a good compensation plan and good training and a good opportunity, then yes, there is a future for direct selling, because not everybody wants to be an Uber driver or a delivery driver or whatever. But there are a number of things that a company has to do to be relevant in today's modern time and that fourth industrial revolution, which I've just talked about. Does that make sense?
Definitely, David. Now let's look at a more specific scenario. So, how does, or what unique qualities or strategies does Xenca employ to stand out in this competitive market now? I mean, it's one thing to have a general assumption and a presumption, but how do you practically roll it out? All these things,
Well, I was thinking about this, and something which I think is worth perhaps mentioning on a broader point, Rahul, from a corporate viewpoint. A lot of companies focus, and I think I said this to you last time, on motivating people, okay? And tied into what we've just discussed, in so much as there are so many different ways that people can earn extra income today, that there are options available to people compared to 20 years ago, in a way that they can generate that additional income. Motivating people is just not enough, because what you get when you just focus on motivating people, and the ones that succeed, the ones that fail, you get a lot of people who fail, okay? And the problem that creates is it creates a bad reputation for the industry. And I'm a great believer in what you should do is you should try and give everyone an opportunity to stay involved in your business and to meet their needs. If they just want to buy a product, if they just want to sell a product to their friend, that's fine. Don't try and force them to become a super leader, because maybe that's not what their place is. I think in a modern direct selling company, you should have a very broad opportunity to meet people at their needs. And all those needs will be different for different people. And from a corporate viewpoint, I think that if you can provide a support, traditionally, a lot of direct selling companies have relied on the training and the support to the field, to the network. But as a company today, you have no control over that, okay? And you also get people who then are empire builders. In other words, they build their great network and they become kings of that network, and that their ego gets out of control. But from a corporate viewpoint, if you can provide a support system, okay, for everyone. So in other words, when somebody joins your company, you have a training program, which isn't forced on them, but is made available and is well advertised to people, then that then gives everyone a level playing field. It gives everyone an equal opportunity to become unequal. And instead of channeling your resources into motivating people, if you can channel your resources as a company into supporting people, but open a door for the people who are ambitious, and then channel your resources into the people who step out from the crowd and say, yeah, I'm serious, I want to do something with this, that's where a company should spend its money. So in other words, let's say you allocate 20% of your available resources to support people, to send them a training course by email when they join, to contact them and say, can we do anything to help you? Is there anything that you any more support you need? And just support everyone, but then maybe create an incentive for the people that say, well, I want to do something with this. I want to build a network. I want to make a larger income. And then you spend 80% of your resources focused on the small number of people who are going to step out from the crowd and do something. Okay. And there's many different ways that you can do that, different incentives, fast start programs, different things. But as a company, your objective is, who are the people who are going to drive this business forward? And then it's a bit like if you've got, and the way I kind of relate this in a training situation is, if you spend 10 nights with someone who's going to do nothing, 10 times nothing is nothing. But if you spend 10 nights with someone who's going to go and spend 10 nights building their business, 10 times 10 is 100. And the same way as if you go to the bank and they have a bank account which offers you 2% interest and a bank account that offers 20% interest, you put your money in the bank that offers 20% interest. And as a company, you put your resources into the percentage of people who are going to go out and build your business, not just be involved. Does that make sense?
I think there is a deep point, I would say very, very important point, I mean, most people would have studied this or heard this theory of 80-20, that you get about 80% of the business from the 20% of the people. But generally, the operating profit or the operating cost of the companies are becoming high operationally is because they're taking care of the whole lot of people, and they are imparting the same set of knowledge to, maybe out of 80 people, they're imparting it to about 70 people, the same set of knowledge. Maybe that's the reason their cost of acquisition is becoming high. And maybe some leaders or some senior people or serious people, they feel that, they've been left out or neglected because you've not been able to focus them what they want actually. So now there are two questions, David. One is, how does the relationship thing happens now? You are dealing with certain set of people, and but the communication keeps on changing. Doesn't somebody feel, yeah, I've been neglected and somebody else been taken care of? I mean, it could be same structure, same team, and then we find somebody from the network and the downline working hard enough, then the upline probably. Do some sort of miscommunication happen there, or how do you handle that in training?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question that you've asked, Rahul, but let me explain it in a way that I think might throw some light on that. First of all, what you do is you involve the leaders with what you're doing. The mistake a lot of companies make is they launch these programs and they do things, but they then annoy the leaders who perhaps then, I mean, I've seen leaders, and I think I said to you last time, the great thing is being able to see both sides and act as a referee sometimes. I've seen leaders that will purposely build a training program that goes against the company training program because they don't agree with it, or whatever it might be. And they'll tell people that join their particular part of the network, don't listen to the company. And I've even seen people, when they get the kits, the starter kits for their group, they get them sent to them and they take stuff out and change them and put their own stuff in because they don't agree with what the company is doing. Okay. And all of that is unnecessary if you make sure that you involve all of the leaders that have some influence in the program. So in other words, we're going to create a program. We want your help. We want your support. We want you to produce some videos. We want you to be involved. Okay, so that it's not just our training program, it's your training program. Now, any leader that's got any sense is going to feel the same way as the 80-20. In other words, they're going to want to spend 80% of their time with the 20% of the people, just the same as the company will. So anything that helps achieve that is better for everybody, and it helps drive the business forward, because you're channeling, you know, it's the old kind of cliche where you've got the story of the magnifying glass on the paper, and you're moving it around instead of holding it still and focusing, and that's what I'm kind of talking about, really, is focusing. But a lot of leaders don't really know what they're doing, you know, I'm sorry to say, and they just rely on motivating everybody and telling everybody how great it is, not what to do. Like I said last time, not this is how you do it, A, B, C, D. Okay. It's just, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. You're going to have this. Would you like an island? Would you like a Ferrari? You know, da, 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 da. And then they keep people in the business on that promise to some extent, but they just motivate people, and they let those people figure things out for themselves instead of identifying the people that want to learn and teaching those people. And quite often, the best leaders will be the most difficult people, because when somebody stands on stage and says, you need to do this, the average person's just going to say, yeah, I need to do this, but probably not do anything. Whereas the leader is going to say, well, why do I need to do this? What's the point of that? What does it achieve? So they question things. And because they question things, the higher up leaders see them as being difficult, when in reality, they're the best potential very often, because they can think for themselves. They're not like sheep who blindly follow stuff. They question, they want to understand. They're more not intelligent, but they're more focused, if you like, on themselves and what they want to do. They've got more of an entrepreneur mentality instead of a job mentality, which is blindly following orders and being told what to do. Now, you know, a lot of people sometimes, you know, they come into this business and they've got that mentality. Unless somebody tells them what to do, they don't do anything, because that's what they're used to, you know, because of they've grown up with that working for someone else process in their mind instead of thinking for themselves processed. But like I said, it's the one that thinks for themselves. They can be the biggest leaders in the future very often, but you have to learn how to handle them right. You have to respect their questions and why they're questioning things. Okay. And it's not enough to just stand on stage and just say, it's all going to be great. It's all going to be great. In fact, I'll tell you a story. Have you ever heard the story about the woman that was married 3 times and was still a virgin?
Is it a story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no idea, David.
Well, the first time she got married, she married somebody that very young when she was at school. And she married a guy that she was at school with. And unfortunately, he turned out to be a homosexual. So she got divorced. And then when she was a little bit older, she married a guy who was much older than her. And on their wedding night, he had a heart attack and died, and, you know, never consummated the marriage. And then she married somebody who was in MLM. Okay. And all he used to do was sit on the edge of the bed and tell her how great it was going to be.
Okay. So where are the three kids now?
It's a joke. Don't worry. Maybe it doesn't translate to India.
Okay.
Because that's what a lot of people do in this business. They just sit on the edge of the bed and tell people how great it's going to be, but they don't do anything. Does that make sense?
I have I think you've just touched a point, and I was discussing with one of the few direct selling CEOs and the business owners in India, and is about how to handle disgruntled leadership. Now, the way they put forward this question is disgruntled, but it was maybe a difference of opinion in way a process is taken care of, or they might have other inputs to be given on a particular training session. But generally, the law of duplication says that, or blindly follow thing, that whatever the top leader has said, then you have to follow that thing. But your way is that you need to listen to people who voice their concern, and probably they have a better chance of taking this business forward. So rather than ignoring them, you bring to the table and probably create a platform where everybody can give input.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Great, David. Now, David, how does
Can I
technology
just
plays
add,
role?
sorry, Rahul, can I just
Yeah,
add
please.
something?
Yeah.
There is um, uh, there is another point to that in
Yeah.
today's society and today's technology is a lot of the senior leaders built their business without technology. So when they're trying to attract younger people and use modern techniques, they don't particularly understand them. So what I would do is I would create a focus group of younger people, okay, as well as, so if I was a corporate executive, okay, then I would want to have a very good working relationship with the top leaders, have them involved in the decision-making process. But I would also like to have a sounding board with the younger people. So in other words, they don't have to have a big pin or be successful, but I'd want them to talk to me about how they thought they could use Instagram or TikTok to grow their business, which the other group won't understand particularly. Do you see what I mean? So to keep up with things, I'd like to have maybe when people reach a certain level, if I mean obviously not just anybody, but if they've started to build a little bit of a network and they're growing the business, but they know and they're under 25 maybe, or they understand technology, then I would create a working group of geeks, like a geek group as well as a leadership group. Do you see what I mean?
Okay. Now, when we talk about technology, David, so one is obviously the social media marketing of the Instagrams and the TikTok. The other, when you meet senior people from the industry, they talk about, a database kind of a platform where you're able to communicate within your team, create a training platform, probably an LMS system also. So apart from the organization, there are leadership people doing it. So having their own app and you just they're asking you to download. So do you a firm believer of having a separate education system for leadership, or an organization should have a standard education program which should be followed by everyone? What is your take? In leadership having their own, or the organization should have a standard thing?
I think the organization should have a standard thing. I work with a company actually that they produce an LMS, and at some point maybe we can talk about that. They're very good at what they do, and they provide the training program for Forever Living Products, which I'm sure you've heard of, one of the larger companies. But I think it goes back to what I said in so much as having the leaders have input on it. The reason they create their own is because very often they don't. Two things. Number one, the company doesn't want to spend the money and create the training. Okay. And the leaders see it as an income opportunity. They charge their downline for the training, which is another revenue source for them. Okay. or they don't agree with the training program that the company produces and they want to do it their own way. Now, if you can bring all those things together, and then create a situation where you have, like I said, a basic training program, but people who step out from the crowd, then they can move on to an advanced leadership training program. And I've got a training program, if you like, which I can send through to you, Rahul, which is an outline of a training program that I've put together for direct selling companies, which kind of cover the points that I think are important. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to have leaders blocking the company's communication, because the danger is then if you get somebody that goes off track, they then can communicate to all of their downline. The company can't reach those people, and they can maybe promote another business to them and say, look, I don't like this company anymore. I'm going to go and join this business. Come with me. Okay. So you want to try and have an insurance policy against empire building. Do you see what I mean? So that you haven't got people building their own empires. And it's very short-sighted if a company won't invest in building their own training program because they don't want to spend the money, and they let the leaders build training programs themselves. They have no control over what those leaders are saying to their downline. Okay. And it's all about creating harmony between the field and the company so that that doesn't happen. And to some extent, if it's an established company that have bad habits, it's much more difficult than if it's a new company and you create the right habits in the beginning. There's a brilliant phrase which I use a lot, which I love, and that is, it's easier to straighten a crooked tree when it's small. You get bad habits into a large group of people, and the larger that group, the more those habits become pronounced, and then they break off into other bad habits that breed more bad habits. And before you know it, the whole organization stops growing. And it's very difficult then to turn that around. But if you can catch that before it happens, and if there are things which are maybe need a little bit of adjustment, adjust those things. It's a bit, like I said, straighten a crooked tree. If a tree's not growing straight, you put it in a tube and you tie it to make it go straight, and it's the same with an organization.
Well said, David. Well said. David, now moving from the leadership to another discussion, which really is of an area of interest for most of the people, is in terms of the compliance laws in UK. Obviously, globally, having a pyramid company and a fight between a pyramid company and an ethical company keeps on going, and it's a never-ending fight. How are the laws in UK? Are they strong enough to protect an ethical company? Companies which are doing fairly enough, or not like a Ponzi scheme or something. Are the laws favoring those companies, or is it still work in progress kind of a scenario?
No, I think it's broader than that, Rahul. In other words, the laws in Europe generally are very good. Okay, and I've been to CELDEA, which is the European organization's conference, a couple of times, as well as the World Federation Direct Selling Association conference. And the pretty much all the direct selling organizations, the DSAs in the different countries in Europe and also in the UK, are pretty active. And there's a good relationship, I would say a better relationship in Europe and the UK than perhaps in the US, because at the moment, the relationship is a little bit strained between the authority and the direct selling organization. That's partly down to politics, because up until Trump lost the election, there was a lot of influence, on the Republican Party by donations, and their direct selling organization had a fairly good relationship. But after that change, it became a lot. The FDA became a lot more aggressive, okay, in the way that it was looking at direct selling organizations. Now, that said, the problem we've got with our industry is that the boundaries are always being pushed, especially by one of the biggest things at the moment is cryptocurrency. But to my knowledge, and I may be wrong, there aren't many, if any, cryptocurrency direct selling businesses that are part of the DSA. Okay, because of the way that they operate. I may be wrong, okay, because I haven't looked at the list recently, but the majority of them are made up by traditional companies like Herbalife, Amway, Arbonne, these type of companies, Avon, that are traditional product-led businesses. Okay, but that said, there is a move towards more competitively priced products, not overpriced products, not where people are paying a ridiculous amount. It doesn't matter. People tell these stories, this product is so special because it was picked by virgins at midnight when there was a full moon, and it was crushed in the hands of eunuchs to create this wonderful powder, which is magic. And that's why we're charging you 50 quid for a little bottle like this, and it's nonsense half the time. But so there's a move away from that towards, well, that's a fair price. And I'm very happy. And we've done some research with Manchester University in the UK on one of our products. And we as Xenca, and we've come up with it. The price is very, very good for the quality. It's not the cheapest. It's certainly not the most expensive, but it's a very competitive price for the high quality product that it is. Whether you bought that in a shop or if you bought it from one of our associates. Okay, and that's the goal of I think generally now in the industry, is to make sure that people aren't paying for overpriced products which don't deliver, just to be able to pay compensation plans that are geared towards building networks, not selling products.
I think it's a very valid point, David. Value for money and value product line, not to have just pricing just for the to adjust a compensation plan. I mean, you could end up paying 100% of the business volume, and then you could probably increase the price by another 100%. I mean, I think this time that this thing should stop eventually. Now, there's another thing that relates is it number of SKUs or the product line that an organization should have? In India, technically, what is happening is that post-COVID, there is a culture of, launching too many product lines. So, I mean, ideally, I would say an average 150 to 250 product lines are, everybody has it, includes everything. It starts from wellness to personal care, skincare, to home care, to FMCG, everything, clothing, apparels, and all. It's kind of a mini retail phenomena, which is picking up in India. Now, it's a huge inventory-led model, and not too much price or value differentiation amongst what is available in the market. Do you think is it like a future for network marketing to have so many products you could replace a mall or something like this? or it is the core strength of the product line, which a company should believe in, and that's the only they should sell, or they should look to become omnipresence kind of a thing.
No, I think that's a great point, Rahul. And there'll be a maybe a difference of opinion on that. But my experience with Amway is Amway had a kind of policy back years ago when I was involved with them, that there was a distributor spend. In other words, people were able to spend X dollars per month, and they were very wary about introducing third-party products, because that would then reduce the amount that people had to spend on the core products which they produced themselves and had the most profit margin for them. Okay, which is a valid argument to some extent. But if someone's going to buy, I don't know, a pillowcase, they're going to buy a pillowcase whether they buy it from their own business or somewhere else, as opposed to a nutrition product, okay, which is part of the core line product. But there are many very successful direct selling companies that have built a large business on a handful of products, okay, and there are two things. When you have an established business, it's good to launch a new product, because that creates momentum and excitement. In other words, we've got this wonderful new product coming. I was speaking for New Skin in London when they launched their aromatherapy range. And what they did is, in the break, when the distributors moved out of the main hall, they then set up all these aromatherapy things, giving off the smell, and so when they came back in, they could smell it. And obviously that then creates excitement, and people then go and buy that product, which generates revenue for the company. Okay. And when a company is a certain size and the business is leveling off, then launching a new product range stimulates the growth. And very often what a company like Amway did is, whenever a new direct selling business came around with a new product, they would launch their own version of that. So, for example, they did that with perfumes. Back in the 80s, there was a few perfume companies that launched, and they were taking some of their market and their distributors. So they launched their own perfume range. Do you see what I mean? And there's reasons for that. But generally speaking, all of those things aside, I think that if you can create a value for money product, a product which is effective and delivers what it's supposed to do, then I would be very wary about adding too many products to that range. And I would do that slowly, rather than, and I've seen a lot of Asian companies where they have catalogs this thick and they just sell all this stuff. And, you know, again, going back to the 80-20 rule, most of the stuff they don't sell. And it costs them to have that inventory, and they don't make that much money from it. But it's kind of like, the more we can show people how big we are and what range we have, the better we are. But I don't agree with that necessarily.
David, I think I could relate to that perfume thing. Way back in 90s, there was some French company who used to also approach in Indian market for the. But I also noticed one thing, that you addressed a New Skin meeting. Okay, that's an interesting take. Now, David, now let's move on to something which is a quick thing. Right now we've discussed something with details. Just for a quick thing for the record, three top trainers that you feel in the world right now, apart from you. I mean, so you can't take your name. So apart from you, who think are three top trainers for direct selling industry? Who do you
Well,
think?
did you have a look at that those articles I sent you about Randy Gage?
Oh, I've gone through it about three times. Think he's nailed few. I love few things. I thought, I mean, this has to be shared with the people.
Yeah, so I mean that would be one of my, um, and I think that apart from that, I would be more traditional and look at somebody like Jim Rohn, although he's not available, and um, I guess I, there's a lot of information produced by Eric War as
Yeah.
well. Okay, some of it good, some of it bad, but it's just constant stuff. Um, I think they would be the ones that I would think of.
I'll Okay. Now, three technology things that you think will impact. Probably we can name one in customer service, or in terms of client acquisition, or in terms of new product launch. What do you think could be three technological things organizations or direct sellers need to look forward to, or they need to learn and adapt?
I think one of the biggest things and one of the biggest mistakes companies make is they you've got to look at their retention. There are three things, okay? Recruitment, retail, and retention. The three R's. And they are vital to a direct selling company. Are you recruiting people? Are the people you recruit selling products? And do they stay in the business? In other words, what's the ratio of people that join compared to the number of people that are still involved and active 12 months later? And I know large direct selling companies, and I know their statistics, and that out of 1,000 people that join, 12 months later, they're lucky if they've got 10 people that are still active, okay? Because their retention is terrible, and that's down to training and so on, and that can be avoided. So I think the number one thing that out of those things is the retention element. In other words, rather than wait for the new recruit to do something, if the company is proactive and not reliant on the distributors to support that person, if it's financially viable, and certainly in India, because of like we've discussed, that maybe the number of people that you have and the overhead of staff is different to maybe other markets. You can afford to employ people, have people ring people. So in other words, after their first 2 weeks, they get a phone call from the company. How are you? Do you need any help? Is there any support that we can give you? Have you looked at this training program that we have available? Okay. Do you know about, is there any information you need on the products? And then just maybe do that again 3 or 4 weeks later. Not to pester people, not to kind of make people think, oh no, I joined this thing and they won't leave me alone, but to make sure that they know that there's someone there that they can talk to other than their upline. Because very often people don't like their upline, or they join a business and they realize that their upline is an idiot. Okay. And, it's like sometimes when I'm doing training on retail, and people say, well, I sold a product to my sister or whatever. There's something. It's like, well, they maybe bought that product just to get rid of you. Okay. Buying the first product or selling the first product is not the key, because a lot of people pester people so much, in the end, they just buy a product to get rid of them because they just want them to leave them alone. It's buying the second and the third and the fourth product, which is the key thing, and creating a residual customer base. Because if you've got a customer that generates volume and you look after that customer, and that then keeps coming in volume, and then another customer, and then another customer, and then another customer. If you have got 20 customers that you just look after, and you're not looking for new customers all the time, but you're just taking care of the existing customers, that creates a residual ongoing income. And there is a company which is doing that very well at the moment in Europe. I'm trying to think of their name. And they've got quite a small customer base, but their ratio of distributors to customer is like 30 customers for every distributor. Okay.
Wow.
You know, they've got their offering really correct in terms of the way they're doing things. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head what the name of it is.
Anyway, the
here we go. It's called Zinzino.
they're in India.
Yeah, but they've got a very small product range. You know, this
Yeah.
is the catalog, and a lot of those are different sizes of the same product. And the product's very good quality. You know, they're doing a lot of things right, and they're probably growing better than any other company in the UK at the moment.
Yeah. I think probably one of the fastest in the Europe right now. I mean, they're a little slow in India, but I think they'll pick it up. The fundamentals are good enough. David, just one thing you really touched on was the upline. So, who exactly is an upline? What exactly is an upline? Then, I mean, if
If you're working with a group of people, I try and teach people to have relationships. I mean, I could talk about this all day, Rahul. I mean,
okay,
it's but
let's have another.
very briefly, you want relationships upline and downline. And
Uh,
if I was building a business and I'd try and have a relationship with 3 people in my upline, okay, so that I've got a different perspective, and vice versa. If I'm building an organization and drive in depth, you want to have relationships with several people in that group in case one person goes off track. Okay. Because the chances of all 3 of them going off track are slim. So that is a dynamic which I think is important, which works both ways. Okay. As an insurance policy. The danger is when you have one person who's in the upline and one person's in the downline, and they have a disagreement, because then they've got no one else to talk to. The one in the downline can just take their group and disappear because the people below them have no relationship with other than this one person. Okay. And if the people below them, if the person falls out with the person above them, they've got no one else to talk to about their problems because they burnt the bridge between them and the only person that they've got a relationship with. So having multiple relationships, upline and downline, is really important. But ultimately, I guess the way that people look at their upline is the one who gives them the most help. the
Okay.
one that sits with them and talks with them and gives them advice and everything else. Does that answer the question?
It answers the question, but it actually leaves a lot of questions unanswered also now. And I get the gist that it's a day-long affair to talk about this thing. And so we can have an entire holy session in India if people are interested. I'll probably get a group of direct sellers who would like to get on, an online thing with you. So, David, there's so much to listen from you. One thing I would like for, just to summarize me a little thing. So we know David as a owner of Xenca. We also know David as a consultant. We also know David as a trainer. And we also know David as uh, a coach, a life coach for people. And David has been a direct seller also. So out of these all five roles, which is the most favorite one? Which is
The thing which I enjoy most, Rahul, and you mentioned last time we spoke about I said I'd never been to India, and you said maybe you could invite me to India. The thing which I enjoy most is teaching leaders, okay? Because I've done very often. I've done weekends trainings where I've done like the first day has been basic training, and like I said, there's 10, I believe 10 key points to build a business, which you need to build a business, and it doesn't matter whether you use TikTok or whether you use telephone. You still have to invite people to take a look at it, and you still have to show it to people and how it works. People aren't going to knock on your door and say, can I join your business? That might happen occasionally, but generally speaking, you have to develop an approach and the psychology behind that, and how you develop an approach and who you talk to. There's a very profound saying which I want to kind of put out there for you, because I think it's one of the most important things that in this industry, and that is, we give the hardest thing to do to the newest person. We give the hardest thing to do to the newest person. And very often people recruit people and let them get on with it. That's like having a birth and a newborn baby and just putting them on a cold slab of marble and expecting them to survive with no nurture, with no support, with no help, whatsoever. And people wonder why their attrition rate is so high. Well, the reason is they're just recruiting people and they're not nursing those people through the first steps to get them strong enough to survive. Okay, so that to me is the key thing. And then, so very often what I'll do is I'll cover those 10 points on the first day, and then the second day I'll just meet with the leaders and cover pure leadership stuff. Okay, and that is really where I feel I really enjoy myself the most, is when I'm talking to a group of people who think they know what they're doing because they've reached a certain pin level in the business. And then they see that a light goes on because they suddenly understand something which they didn't understand, or maybe they did it, but they didn't know why they did it, or, how to avoid people going off track, or how to avoid losing the relationship with your downline, how to identify when someone's ego is completely out of control and see the early warning signs and stop it from happening, and these kind of things. So, 40 years of doing this, it's like there's all this stuff inside here, and all you've got to do is press a button, it just comes out, as you probably realize already, Rahul, from talking to me.
I think it's time flies when you listen to when you're listening to somebody like you with so much of experience and knowledge, David. And more or less, say I've spent about 22 years in this industry, and I could still pick up those 5-6 points, and I realized, oh, maybe if I would have known this thing about 15 years back, I could have made a little more difference to my team. I think people are still looking to improve themselves, want to learn. I mean, that's the best part. I think, David, there are too many questions to be asked, but I think I'll not take much of your time. And it's been a great, great learning and talking experience with you. And I will also pen down this article, and I'll send you a copy for this for your in the print also, and it will be in electronic format also for you. And any message for Indian direct selling industry, may not be today or maybe day after, or whenever you want to give it to us, you can just send me across. I will include that message, in the video itself. Any message for Indian direct selling?
I think that people outside of the market, I think maybe you liked the post I put on LinkedIn about the number of people within this circle compared to the rest of the world. 25% of the world's population are in this circle. I can't remember the other way around. I think it is. People don't realize just how big, how massive India is, and with that comes a huge opportunity. In terms of the size of the market, the income that can be made without looking outside of the market. But there's also huge opportunity for the Indian organizations to look outside of India, because there hasn't been a massive expansion of an Indian company, to my knowledge, in a lot of the major markets where the business, the industry operates. So, I think that to get it right, get success, and then expand internationally would be my objective if I was the owner of a direct selling business in India. That would be the three things: is to get the right foundation, to grow like crazy, to respect the fact that other markets are different, and maybe I need to adjust things slightly to capitalize on those markets, but to make a name for India worldwide. I think that would be the way that I would look at it, and the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do.
I think this is a great message, David. Any Indian direct selling company owners looking for it can obviously get in touch with you for the advice. This is true. I mean, you have to build the foundation, grow like crazy in Indian market, and look for the foreign markets as way to expand. I mean, obviously, this is a world of globalization, and the best and the fittest will survive. Right, David. With this, David, I think we'll come to the end of this session. And so thank you, and so great to, learn everything from you. Thank you, David, for great insights on leadership and training programs. I think your viewpoints about changing leadership and the dynamics of this direct selling market will be a great insight to our Indian direct selling industry. With this, we come to our end to our show. Friends, keep watching Rahul Sudan Value podcast for great insights like this. Thank you so much.